that idea that we have to create a team and we have to bring them together. You still need to have someone with the vision. You still need to have somebody who's, keeping us towards that, again, that sort of that North Star of here's what the outcome needs to be. But there are so many pathways to get there. But like I said, at every sort of step in that path, there's a different kind of way that you can use lighting or sound or bringing voices together or putting information up even on a screen, but in a way that's more impactful, more meaningful, that maybe the colorblind person can read because now we're thinking about those kinds of things. So it's all of those little tiny pieces.
Hello and welcome to today's episode of the Keynote Curators podcast. I'm Seth Dechtman, your Keynote Curator. I want to welcome and thank everybody for joining us, as well as a special welcome to first-time listeners. Our special guest today is Tahira Endean. Welcome, Tahira.
Thanks, Seth. Happy to be here.
Great that you're happy to be here. We're happy as well. Where does this podcast find you today?
Today, I am at home in Vancouver, Canada.
Vancouver, Canada, our neighbors to the Great White North, Vancouver. I want to share with our listeners, the overwhelming majority of them are meeting professionals, meeting marketers, event planners, conference planners. But we also have small business, medium-sized business operators that come in and glean great information, great content, great insights from our podcast. I'm excited about today's conversation because, you hear a word thrown out a lot, thought leader or the word insight, but you really are a thought leader and we're excited. You're known as an intentional event designer, a connector, a storyteller, an author, an optimist. We love that. And most interestingly, a self-described talent for wrestling alligators. I will have you know, I have alligators in a pond about 100 yards from my house. So we see them all the time. I might need to get some tips from you on that a little bit later.
I think you should move.
Yeah, exactly. That's the tip. Move. Call the moving company. It's not the alligators with the kinds of scales and tails, though. Tahira Endean is the current head of program at IMEX and the former head of events for Site. With years of hands-on event management and marketing experience, Tahira brings a fresh approach to IMEX as the association aims to drive innovation and provide powerful, purposeful experiences for its attendees.
That's what I know.
I know you do. And you want to expand on that. You want to continue to develop the capacities and provide more, not that more is better, but unique and just transforming that whole process and experience and education for everybody. I want to jump right into the heart of the matter of this alligator wrestling. That skill is something that, when I was introduced to you and got to know you and it drew my attention, caught my eye. Would you care to elaborate? Event professionals, I always say they're the chief cook and the bottle washer. They wear a lot of hats, preparing an agenda, AV teams, signage, rooms, catering, food and beverage, on-site, off-site security. But alligator wrestling, that's one I haven't come across yet. Would you care to elaborate?
Well, I've been hanging in your backyard. You haven't noticed? So alligator wrestling really just comes from, I've always been the person that if it seems impossible, let's just ask Tahira how we can do it. I'm probably also the person that comes up with the ideas that they're like, no, that's impossible. And then they figure out how to do it. So, with wrestling alligators, they're slippery, they have sharp teeth. So, it's all of those things. And there's nothing that I like more than actually figuring out how we can sort out a really big problem and make it be a success.
Yeah, I find that, all kidding aside, that meeting professionals are innately problem solvers. And it could be a big problem solver, a big piece of the puzzle, or something small. But the show must go on. The agenda, the education, the content must be delivered. The attendees must be served. And sometimes events are 1,000 problems to be solved, or planning an event is 1,000 problems solved. And so alligator wrestling can just be thrown into the ring for that one more time. What are some of the stickier, thornier, proudest, most unique anecdotes of problem solving that you've had to take on either recently or something that really excites you?
So I think that here's where I've been really lucky, I think, is that I love events. And I realize that I can have the greatest idea in the world for an event, and it means nothing without all of the people who then make it happen. And so, what I really try to do is to start at the beginning and inspire people to be on my side. And so that they want to work with me to get to our North Star. And sometimes it's could be a North Star that is my vision for an event. Usually it's how my event, really how I look at us as in the event design world is we are the engineers and the leaders of our organization are the architects. They're driving how they want their organization to feel. They've got this idea. But unless you come in and bring all the mechanics and all the electricity and all of the furniture and all of the things that are going to bring that to life, you have nothing. So we're the engineers that fall behind and do all of that. And behind my idea is going to be all of the people who are doing the work that's going to really actually make that happen. And so what I want to do is to make sure that people understand why we're working towards a specific vision. I want them to be as engaged. I might have one event I'm focusing on. They have 12 events that they're focusing on.
Right.
I want them to make mine a priority when it needs to be a priority. And then what usually happens is when things go sideways, and they do all the time. It's could be a weather issue. It could be it's something that's out of your control. You're told something's going to happen a certain way, then you find out that that's actually not how it's going to happen. There's so many things that can happen. And what I find is that generally when people come to me with a problem, they also come to me with the solution. They're handing me one, or usually a best way to how they think it should be solved, but sometimes a couple of options. And I think that that is where we can get to success a lot faster. The other thing that we need to remember about, as planners coming in, I might be coming into a venue where I've got my venue. I might have an in-house or an exclusive caterer. I might have an audiovisual company that is either in-house or out of house. The reality is those people have probably worked in that venue 50 times. I might be in that venue once. It might be in a
Right.
country I don't speak the language. And so I really need to rely on the people that are making it all happen. And that goes for every event that we do. There's so many events that I've done where I just think, I can't believe that just happened.
Yeah.
But then it did, and we're
Yeah.
so fortunate that that's whatever it is that we've dreamed of, and I've, done events on 4 continents. I've done them a ton of outdoor events because, again, alligator wrestling. "Oh, that looks complicated. Let's take people to somewhere that nobody can get to easily. Tahira can do that."
Right.
Unfortunately, I actually have a problem. I feed off of that stuff.
Right.
So,
You're
it
you're
is
you're like, not only do you like it, but it finds you.
yes, it does. So I think that there's just, that's what makes it fun too, is figuring out how we're gonna make something work that people think might not.
The common thread, and there were a couple, but one was people, right? You got to get them on board. And you use the analogy engineers, architects, plumbers, electricians. Literally, there might be plumbers, especially in areas that are hard to get to, that you might need for some something
Oh,
to
I've
set up.
had sinks built. We've had
Yeah. Yeah.
you know.
And I was recently in Asia at an event, and it was pretty straightforward. It was in a hotel, and they had been there. This client had been there for about 10 years and was familiar with the rhythms and movement of everything. But we had, for the first time, a very, very high profile keynote speaker. And it required security, which is not uncommon. But we had some challenges with the pathways of where to navigate and move this person, this physical body, without getting thronged by the crowd and all that. And, we had to involve in house security, this person's private security, but then the butler of this kind of very high end hotel that knew certain ways to manage the elevators and certain routes that were So at the end of the day, you had all these high-end security people and all the protocols in place, but it was the butler that knew a little bit more of the nooks and crannies of this building and where to go. And it was through a utility kind of hallway that nobody really moved through because the caterers and the AV people had no reason to do that. And we were able to, get it all done. So I just chuckle and I can relate to the people. Sometimes it's the most unusual characters, the unusual suspects, if you will, that play a key role at a key moment to keep the event flowing.
Yeah, every time. So,
Yeah,
you know,
right.
it also just made me think when you were saying that about how, if you're truly a celebrity and people think your life is so glamorous, it actually probably is a lot of it is in the back of utility hallway. So,
Yeah, no, right. No. And we turned, it was an athlete, it was a boxer from Asia. And, he's a little guy. And he had joked, he said, if I was a heavyweight, I don't think we would have been able to navigate through this. And he's probably true, because we were like, there wasn't exposed wire or anything like that, but it
yeah.
was like there were buttons and switches, and it was pretty funny. So, and you're right, sometimes the VIP entrance at a customs part of an airport is the least glamorous, but the safest. Right?
Yeah, absolutely. And, it was always a bit safety first, and
That's right.
sometimes, we were working with a head of state, and they were coming for their rehearsal. And so just to do a quick sound check, make sure the teleprompter is in the right position for the next morning, so we spend a lot of time clearing the ballroom. Everybody's out, everybody who's in the ballroom is cleared for security and all of those things. And then I just watched them walk across the street from the hotel, cross the street, come in the main door. I'm like, interesting. So,
Right.
but their team had decided that that was, both the most expedient and the fastest route that was going to
Right.
have the least potential for something to happen. So that's
Yeah.
what they did. And then they came in and, they did their sound check and made sure everything was fine, jumped off the stage, came over to the owner of the event, introduced themselves as if we don't know who they are,
Right. Right.
and
Right.
but thank you for having me, and it's
Yeah.
nice to meet you, and left him across the street again. So
Right.
I had
Yeah.
spent prior to that 5 days in back hallways with 5 different security teams, internal, external, state,
Yeah.
and all that stuff, right? So
Yeah.
it's exactly that. It's at the end of the day, you're gonna A, they're humans, and B, we're generally gonna take the path of least resistance.
That's right. And what works, everybody's committed to having it work and be
Yeah.
optimal and be efficient. So you plan, you have contingencies, you try to think things through and anticipate. But at the end of the day, if they come in from across the street, that's kind of makes sense and it works. And let's just roll with it because we got other stuff to take care of.
Yeah. And
So I want to
ultimately, we're
go
not in
ahead.
charge of that. Ultimately, we're not
Yeah.
in charge of that. That's, there's people for that.
That's right.
So,
That's right. I want to shift gears a little bit to your book,
yeah.
Intentional Event Design, Our Professional Opportunity. This offers readers, 2 decades of perspective and experience that you have producing events and designing environments where meaningful connections are created and nurtured and real growth occurs among individuals and organizations, people attending and participating and engaged in these events. Do you think event professionals' value to organizations today is adequately recognized and rewarded in terms of the design and creating a context and a framework that has those attendees experience opportunities to growth and expand and transform?
Yes and no. So I think it depends on the organization and on the individual. It depends on the team they have around them. And also it depends on their area of specialty. So my, area of specialty is creating those kinds of environments, but there's lots of easy ways to do it. And by easy, I just mean making small tweaks. So we've all been to meetings that are ridiculous. You're just like, why is this coffee so bad? What was that registration experience? Why is this chair so uncomfortable? Why am I sitting in the dark listening to people over and over again? And there's so many things that can go right with that experience and so many things that can go badly with that experience.
Right.
And it's just those teeny tiny things that happen. So I think that the book it's a great book. I'm gonna, when I first wrote it, I was very Canadian girl about it. Oh, it's a book. It's people might like it. And I
I
think
just
that
put some thoughts together, you know.
yeah, just some random thoughts. And so, and my favorite review was still the first review, which was Julius Solaris. He's quite well known in the event industry. And the
Yes.
review is basically just like, yeah, there's a lot of books about event design that are crap, and this isn't one of them. And, that really kind of sums it up. But what I did is I went back as we were nearing the end of the pandemic and went through the entire book thinking, oh, this is not going to be useful anymore. And I went through it and was like, this is actually really great information. It goes through all of the basics of how do we integrate technology? How do we set up rooms? How do we think brain first? People are arriving brain
Yeah.
first. What's going to be,
Yeah.
what are they seeing? What are they hearing? What does it smell like? How is it going to make them feel? But it's not, here's exactly how you have to do it. It's like, here's 3 things you could try to make this part
Right.
better. Here's 3 things you could try to make this more impactful. And when people start to, my favorite thing is when I'm talking to somebody and we're working on an event and I see a dog-eared copy or post-it sticking out of the book on the shelf behind them. That's my favorite thing. So, because it really just is about, at the end of the day, events are so powerful. We don't
Yeah.
have a better medium for change and transformation. We simply don't. And when we get it right, man, it's so good.
Yeah.
So it really
Yeah.
is,
I,
thinking about what are those things
yeah.
that we can do.
If you want to continue with the construction, the engineer, architect, it just crossed my mind. I often call events vehicles, you know, they're
Yeah.
vehicles that can really transport and forward at a real velocity, whether it's messaging, whether it's, initiatives, whatever it is that you want to have transform. I was chuckling again. I'm chuckling today. I was chuckling again as whether it's the dog ears, is that representative of notes and things that could be improved or streamlined or optimized?
I think it's, when I work with people and I can see them getting excited about implementing some of the tools and ideas. Yeah, that's when they're just like, yes, we can make this work. Yes, we
Yeah.
can make this better. And I don't need to be the designer of everything. That would be impossible. No one person can be the designer of everything. Even the
Right.
most famous event designers are not designing it by themselves. What they're
No.
doing is they are being the collaboration artists, stealing, sort of terminology from David Adler, but that idea that we have to create a team and we have to bring them together. You still need to have someone with the vision. You still need to have somebody who's, keeping us towards that, again, that sort of that North Star of here's what the outcome needs to be. But there are so many pathways to get there. But like I said, at every sort of step in that path, there's a different kind of way that you can use lighting or sound or bringing
That,
voices
yeah.
together or putting information up even on a screen, but in a way that's more impactful, more meaningful, that
Yeah.
maybe the colorblind person can read because now we're thinking about those kinds of things. So it's all of those little tiny pieces.
You mentioned sound and lighting and even you're designing and creating environments, and one thing is the concept, and then when you actually deploy it in real life, right, it's no different than
Yeah. Like I'll give you a great example from during the pandemic.
please.
Was I went to an event and it was still, out coming out of pandemic, but not, not everyone was comfortable still being in places. And so we're in a room and it's, the content is amazing. But there's 100 people. We're in chairs, big chairs, but we're all separated by like 10 feet from every other person with our own little table. And then it's time for coffee. And there's one small table set up for coffee that everybody swarms. So there's like a gifting table, everybody swarms. So it's like even those things where we just haven't thought through, when people move from A to B, what does that feel like?
Yeah.
How do we make people comfortable at both of those things? Yeah. And so we can still translate that to now we're back to sitting side by each, but not everybody is comfortable still sitting side by each. We don't want to always feel like we're on an airplane or in a theater seat. So what are the options that we're giving people? How are we layering seating now so that people can find whether it's their beanbag chair, their stool at the back of the room, their elevation, there's a space around them that they're comfortable with. One of the things that we're doing at IMEX, we're so lucky. We have this great partnership with the Google Experience Institute. And so one of the pieces that they're bringing to the show this year is a resilience room. And that resilience room is, they're doing it with a group out of the UK called Eventwell. Helen has been working for years on creating mental health and safe spaces at events for people, and finding ways for people to incorporate just more genuine well-being into their lives, not just into their events, but so both.
Right.
But for the people who are truly neurodivergent and need that space to really just sit back and be in their own space, that's going to be the space for them. Beside that is a liminal space, is what it's called. So, which liminal, I had to look it up because I didn't know what it was. So, I'm going to assume nobody else, I'm going to assume the whole world doesn't all know what it is. But it basically means a space in between. So, it's a space that's in between the show and the resilience room. And so, you maybe don't need everything, but you still need a place that's a little bit quiet.
Right.
And so a
Right.
place to just get yourself recharged and refreshed a little bit.
Yeah.
So it's even bringing in those things, but you don't need to have a lot to do that. I
Yeah.
remember about 5 years ago setting up, I'm going to call it a liminal space because that's really what it was. And we were in the Vancouver Convention Center. And so we took a space, a hallway that wasn't going to have a lot of traffic because of what was happening in the way the venue was being used, but that had full ocean front. So you're looking out at the ocean and trees and sky and at the
Beautiful.
park, and set up chairs, but the chairs weren't together. The chairs all had a lot of separation between them. And this was 2018, so a long time before the pandemic. And I remember walking through this space with our CEO, who essentially said, "Well, that was a waste of money. What are people going to do here?" And then she saw it being used 2 days later. And I was walking behind her as she was walking through it with one of the stakeholders. And they're like, "Oh my gosh, this space is like, it's so nice. It's so beautiful. It's like a great place for people to just get away and have a few minutes." And she was like, "Oh, yes, it's been designed that way." And I was like, and that's perfect, because
Yeah.
at least they saw that what its purpose was in action and understood that, yes, had actually been a good thing. But sometimes you have to take those chances and, just try a little thing and be like, "Oh, that's something that really worked for people." So it was a large event. So we had quite a lot of space, but that could be 5 chairs in a corner that you're all just facing different ways, like imagine a daisy,
Right.
but all the chairs face out.
Right.
So you're not having to talk to other people. You can just legitimately take a moment. Sometimes that's what we need. But it also comes down to, how are we feeding people? Are we offering, we have, a whole world now of the sober curious. What are we doing for them? Most events I go to, it's just like, you can have water or wine. Great. So it's a good thing I
And
like water and
sometimes
wine.
and
Perfect for me,
sometimes more
actually.
wine,
But
sometimes more wine than water.
but that's not a perfect choice for everybody.
That's right.
So it's just thinking about those things and taking the time, making the time sometimes to go through and look at what some of those alternatives are. If it's a bigger picture thing, then, for example, food and beverage, I work with a group that is very sustainably. I work with several groups that are very sustainably minded, but so we literally have a sheet of parameters that goes out so that the venue knows before they're even starting to design the menus. We don't want any plastic water bottles. We prefer a plant forward menu. We want, where it makes sense to have things that are fresh and locally sourced and seasonal. That's going to be our preference. We don't want, so
Right.
we know that we're, so whatever those things are, but so you're not wasting time going
Yeah.
back and refining things that could have just been addressed at the beginning. So there's ways of designing purposefully from the beginning. So I always look at, people centric, purpose driven. What does that mean? And when you get those outcomes, when you've taken the time for people to feel like they're cared about, and then when things go wrong, whatever that might mean, um, if people trust that you actually have their best interests at heart, they will probably be more forgiving of whatever might happen.
That's right.
And my favorite example of this was, we had a small group, 50, 60 people. We were in Switzerland. And we had a day where we'd done some morning education. The group split up into a few smaller groups, but about half of the group was going to do an experience on the glacier. And, there'd been a weather call. Yes, we're going ahead. Well, they got there and the event was canceled due to weather. So
Mm.
now there's, 25 people at the mountain. Not really, so what happens now? And what happened next was two things. One was that the hosts they said, hang on, we're going to find us somewhere great to go for lunch and we're going to go there. And so they found a great place to go for lunch. There was no rush to get there. There was no panic. There was just lots of good conversation. They had, already spent a day and a half getting to know each other. Most of them had known each other before we got there. And they had a really wonderful afternoon. How I knew it was wonderful was nobody told me. I found out at 6 o'clock that night when they arrived at the dinner and somebody said, "Oh, you heard about the glacier?" I was like, "What happened at the glacier?" Because I was setting up for the evening. And nobody texted, nobody called, nobody posted on social, nothing. They just went and enjoyed their
Yeah.
afternoon.
Right.
So that's where when you set things up and really have put all the building blocks into place up to that point for 2 days, that's the kind of result that you can get. So
That really speaks to a day and a half of a program where whether they knew each other or not beforehand, you have a community, you have a connection, you have
yeah,
people that have formed. So, okay, we'll dance with that one. The music changed a little bit. That's really great. That's really
it was
cool.
really great.
Yeah. It's things happen, fire alarms go off in the middle of the night in one of these big properties where there's 6, 7, 800 rooms and it interrupts, it's at a time of the night, 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning, and the start of the show is at 8 a.m. This impacts, people's days. So how do you communicate and build in some margin there? And this is where the event designers and event creators and the event architects and engineers really have to call an audible in the moment. And like you said, when people experience that you have their best interests in mind and in heart, really people are forgiving, but they're also agile with you and adaptable. And I think it starts from the beginning to hear it. At the registration form online, to keep it as simple as possible. They can be onerous. I go to about, I would say, an average of 2 a month. I like to attend. I book a lot of speakers. Not all of them require that I go. I either go because the speaker is more of a VIP and we need extra hands and eyes and feet on the ground. Others, there might be a series of speakers that require a little bit of handling as well, or it's an opportunity to catch up with some of my favorite people, the meeting professionals. Truly, I can't tell you the variety of experiences. Well, I can tell you because you know better than me. Some I go and my name tag is already kind of there waiting, right? Either by name or by vendor or whatever it is. Some, after I filled everything out 6 weeks ago, 3 months ago, I still have to do 6 click throughs or fill out 2 screens, or I don't even know. And I'm not a programmer. I'm not a registration expert, and I'm not one. I dance with it. I'm like, okay, I need to do this. No problem. Here, let me get my credential and everything. But I am left with, gosh, if this is going on here, I'm sure we can optimize a lot of things along the way. And that is something that probably doesn't take extra money.
Let me tell you my worst experience.
All right, let's get into it. Come
Let's do
on.
the worst registration experience ever. So I have booked in, I'm going to an event and it's in a beautiful small town in Europe, and I arrive at the event. I arrive the day before because, you jet lag and all of that. And so I go out for dinner with a few people the night that I found in the app, meet some lovely people, never see them again. That's another story. I arrived to the venue and it's this beautiful old theater with a big open plaza in front of it. And there's all these volunteers sort of milling about. And there's one sign above the door, but nothing else. And so I'm like, hey, there's 2 doors. So I'm like, oh, I'll choose the door on the right. So I go into the door on the right and
Door number 1.
door number 1. And so they say, and I see what is obviously a registration desk. And I say, oh, I'm here to register. Oh, do you have your QR code? No, but I can find it in my email. Oh, we can just look you up by last name. Why didn't we just look me up by last name? Nobody has their QR code ready. So start with that. Then they look and they say, oh, you're not a VIP. Okay, like what does that even mean? Like,
You're like, let me tell you
I'm
something.
like,
In my
oh,
world, I
okay.
am the VIP. So let's just get that started.
So I'm like, oh, okay. So they're like, well, you didn't come in the right door. Okay, well, there again, no signage, no
Oh
volunteers
my
milling about talking
goodness.
to each other. Nobody. So go to the next door, go through the whole experience again, QR code. Then they give me a wristband. So now 400 people. I'm not at a music festival. I'm at a business conference.
Right.
I don't love name badges any more or less than the next person, but I understand their purpose.
Right.
Boy, did I feel the understanding of their purpose. I love name badges now. Now I want everywhere I go, I want a name badge to my kitchen now because, it's like, Mom,
Right.
just in case anybody forgets.
That's
Because
right.
it was just such I just felt so disintegrated from
Onerous,
everything.
irksome.
It was just, and then the whole event just kind of didn't all of the design details that they could have made fabulous, nothing happened.
Yeah.
I literally met the people who were sitting around me because it was in a theater, so you had assigned seats, and there was no when you had a break, there was no coffee, no water, you had to go
Mm.
out into a village in Italy. So we can say, okay, people in Italy know how to produce, like, a lot of coffee fast and move people through, like, a barista lineup. Not when 400 of them just stand on 3 coffee shops.
Yeah.
So it just created just I was sort of on and on and on. So, but there were so many things, like, imagine if that experience could have been all right, morning break, no coffee, no water in the venue. Okay, but here you go. Here's your this is your orange cookie. You're going to take this orange cookie and you're going to go to any one of these things that we've marked on a map for you,
Right.
or we have people standing in front of it in a pink T-shirt.
And you can
Um,
get these
and
several options of drinks or coffee or whatever.
yeah, you can get
Yeah.
anything up to like 10 euros or
It
whatever. It was
yeah.
just, and now I'd be holding my orange cookie, wearing my wristband, and I would have met other people
That's
holding their
right.
orange cookie because
Yeah.
I would have known we're all at the same event.
Yeah. And look, I've experienced not to that degree, but I've experienced where I've had to walk from one end to the other. And look, the walking doesn't bother me, and I usually get there early because I like to. But I'm just like, this is inane. It's such a simple, benign thing that whether it's the credential or some other pieces and maps that are missing or clear directions. I had one in San Diego in August. I was with a gold medalist, Dominique Dawes. I was with, she was great. I've booked her a dozen times probably. She has twins. I have twins. We have a little bit of a kindred spirit. And I've been to this particular event the Sunday before the big annual conference starts. I've booked the speaker probably for the last 14 years. I know what room it's in. We're going up, and some security person is like, "Where do you want to go?" And I was like, I forget the name, 101 or whatever. They were like, "No, it's around that way." And I didn't doubt myself. I was like, "Actually, we're here. It's just no, no, no. 101 is around that way." And then one of their colleagues came over, and we walked, I don't know, a quarter mile. We went around an entire circle and came back. And as we went into the door, we saw the backs of the security guards that told. And it wasn't like I didn't trust myself or like I was in front of Dominique and I wanted to like look good or know what I would. Not at all. I was just like, but I was like, all right, they have agreement here and they're being, pretty like, I don't know, not authoritative, but they were pretty convinced themselves. I was like, all right, maybe things change. I don't know. I was just like, what, and we were joking when we left. I was like, we could complete the Ironman and go all the way around, and that way we do a full circuit. She was like, not today, But those types of things just, it just happen. Let's shift gears a little bit more one more time. I want to talk about, something that I believe is near and dear to you about creating the importance of creating space for dialogue, for innovation, for creativity that occurs at the events. This is all inside of this context and this frame of digital disruption. What does that mean to you? And how do you combine digital and interpersonal connections so that they're playing off of each other, they're complementing each other and not competing against one another?
So there's so many ways of looking at this. Reality check. We're in the digital age. It's like it's done. We're there. So, we have robot greeters, we have hologram presenters, we have a we have a computer in our pocket at all times that is full of distractions. And people are going to use all of those things, and we're going to all use the tools that we have available to us. And I think what you have to do is to create something that's more compelling than what's in their pocket. And then you need to find ways to make it so that you feel safe and comfortable. Sitting on our phones, doesn't matter what we're doing. We could be checking email, we could be looking at photos, doesn't matter what we're doing. It's a very comfortable place for us now.
Yeah.
We use it as a crutch everywhere that we go.
Sure.
There's information that we're looking for, but there's also, it's easy and it's safe. And if you're on your phone, then you aren't just sitting there lonely, right? So it's the ultimate buddy bench in some ways. And so what we need to do is to create ways that people can meet. So again, let's go back to this, had the bad registration experience. Shortly after that, I was at an event that I was working at the event, but in a very sort of nominal capacity. So it wasn't my event to be in charge of. I had a specific role to do, which was fantastic, by the way. And so but registration, so they've had the normal, like a normal conference, has a bunch of pre-meetings, boards meet, and so, people have their little groups and they do all that stuff. And then the opening plenary is going to be at 1:00. And so now it's maybe like 11:30, 12:00, and people are starting to, sort of arrive en masse. And the lineup gets quite big. And what happens is all of the leaders of this organization start texting each other. Oh, people are starting to drive people. And they're all out working the line. They're introducing people to each other. They're welcoming people in. Nobody told them to do that. That's what they're doing is they've created a space, 700 people. One of the things that they did was they created a 200-seat networking lounge. So that could be, you could take your buffet lunch there or into the meeting room. You could have your coffee breaks there, but you could find people and it was comfortable to meet people. And
that's great.
And the leadership team had their eye out to introduce people to each other. So it's really, small things to connect people. But that is also, it's those kinds of events where those collaborations start and where innovation happens. And you don't have innovation in a bubble. It just doesn't work like that. And so I think that, it's one of the things, somebody was saying earlier today, we did our IMEX speaker briefing call. And, there's maybe, honestly, probably less than half of the speakers are on the call because people just know they know what to do and they're not uncomfortable with, the process and all of those things. And so, but somebody who's a very experienced speaker said, what are the mistakes, who hasn't been to IMEX before? So his question was, what are the mistakes most speakers make when they get to IMEX?
Good question.
And so two good answers. There's definitely some good answers, but one of the good answers from somebody who had presented for the first time last year, he said, be prepared that the people who are there at the beginning of your session could not be the same people who are there at the end of your session. So don't create a session where the information has to build on itself. And I was like, that's really interesting. Like, that's actually a really interesting perspective. And what I would say is that a lot of speakers, and I'm not talking about your keynotes with all their security teams, not those people, but all the rest of the speakers in the world who have information to share.
Right.
Don't just show up, do your session and depart. You've just wasted every opportunity.
Yeah.
Because nobody knows you now as a person. People might love your message, but if they don't think you're accessible, they're not going to be rushing to hire you.
That's
and
right.
Again, there's levels of speakers. So that's not,
Yeah, but it could be the ones that are the VIPs that I discussed earlier, or breakout speakers. All that's applicable to everybody, And I agree. It shows a level. It demonstrates an accessibility and interest, and like you said, what's another? Build it in. It's not like a surprise. Oh my God, it's over. I have to go. No, you've had months to organize and schedule. So that's a great one.
And I think it's just, the more that we can be, and it's also, and especially a show like IMEX, when people see your speaker ribbon, they're just like, oh, what are you speaking on? Like,
Right.
people will actually, I've been everything at IMEX. So I've worked there for a year, but I've been the exhibitor, the buyer, the speaker, the stand builder, the lead tech. I've done every role basically.
The escalator rider.
I've done it all. No, that's Precious Williams. So she's doing this whole Pitch Perfect thing where she starts down at the bottom of the escalator and then she's riding the escalator with people.
She's
when
fantastic.
I've done to the bottom.
Yeah.
Then they do a different pitch entirely than when they rode the escalator. So fun.
She's fantastic.
So good. So much fun.
Yeah.
But it's also, I think that's the other fun thing for me about speakers like Precious I think like we said at the beginning, right now, my role, we're curating about 120 to 150 sessions. Um, and so looking at the balance between things that come to us, uh, versus the things that we're choosing to add and augment and to
That's
build
right.
out, a
Yeah.
big program. And it's when you have a speaker like that who says, well, I could do my speech, and I'm just like, but what if we tried this thing that you've never tried before? And they're like, yeah, let's do that.
Yeah.
So I love when people are open to the like, yeah, let's do that. And so we have a few of those. The escalated pitches we'll do again because they were so popular last year.
Yeah.
We have
Yeah.
some other like little surprises like that coming,
That's
this
awesome.
year. But that's what's fun for me.
I have an idea for 16-second meditation, but we can do that in a different podcast.
I love that.
Yeah. So we're at the end here. I'm going to leave a little bit on the table as I always do, because we're pointing towards, we've hit past 50, almost 60 episodes towards 100, and we're going to revisit. So I'd like to down the road, see how things have developed and transformed. So we're going to finish it off with what we call a 20 questions, which I explained earlier before we started officially recording. It's not technically 20 questions, but it's in the spirit of it. So are you ready to go?
Yes.
All right. These are short, quick, kind of word association answers. What's your go-to chocolate dessert?
Ooh, anything without nuts because I'm allergic.
What's your favorite dish or cuisine to cook?
Anything I'm cooking at home. Doesn't matter what it is.
Ice cream, chocolate or vanilla?
Ooh, vanilla.
What's the last book you read?
I have about 5 on the go. So,
Pick one.
Your Brain on Art.
Ooh,
So
I like that.
Yeah.
What's the most interesting thing about you that we wouldn't know from your resume?
Ooh, that I can leg press 360 pounds.
Wow. What's your favorite way to immerse yourself in nature?
Just being in it. That doesn't matter. I can stand in the ocean. I can go snowshoeing. I can run through I don't care. Anything that's outside.
Social media, friend or foe?
Social media is a necessary evil.
Okay. That's a good,
Okay.
good, thoughtful, good curated answer. I like that. What's next on your bucket list?
Finishing book number 2.
Very cool. Very, very cool. I can't wait to get an advance copy of that one.
I will be happy to share. It's going to be good.
Great.
You know?
Yeah, I've undying faith in you. Tahira, that's come to the end of this episode. I want to just thank you for your great conversation, your thoughtful answers, your generosity of spirit, your willingness to come on. And I look forward to a relationship that can only grow from here, and, working together and just building and paying it forward along the way with all the architects, engineers, plumbers, electricians, you name it. Build a sink in nature, turn a glacier into lunch, whatever it takes. I want to be part of it. So thank you for being part of the Keynote Curators podcast.
Thank you for having me. It was a joy.
Thanks for spending time with us today. If you enjoyed this video, like and subscribe to our content. We'll keep bringing you the latest industry news and insights. Don't forget to follow us on social media so you never miss an update. And if you're looking for a keynote speaker for your next event, reach out to us directly or visit our website at thekeynotecurators.com.